All right. Well, hopefully everybody can hear us now. We had a little bit of a audio malfunction there at the very beginning, so I appreciate everybody's patience. We wanted to give ourselves a few minutes here to get started, get everybody warmed up and from their original meeting. Thank you for attending our webinar today. We hope you'll find it very interesting. Let me jump in because we've already burned a few minutes. So my name is Patrick Stonelake. I'm a founder of Fruition Partners. I currently serve as our Director of Innovations. The reason why I'm on this webinar today speaking to you is because we have a great deal of experience at Fruition with IT asset management. It actually is one of the case studies on which we founded this company. And the CEO, Mark Saluto, and I have had a long association with IT asset management over multiple different tools and process areas over the 8 or 9 year history of this company. We're really interested today in bring your own device, which is the inexorable trend that is facing many IT asset managers today. So we're hoping to give you a little bit of advice and some pointers on how to deal with the changes that are happening in your world today. Also with me is Brian Hulse. He is the Director of U.S. Sales Engineers for Matrix 42. Brian, say hi so everybody knows what your voice sounds like.
Good afternoon, everyone.
So that's Brian. And the reason why Matrix 42 is here, and Brian will explain a little bit as we go along, is that with these personal devices becoming extremely significant for IT asset managers, you need to have a way to control and secure and manipulate those devices while still providing the freedom that your internal customers and your business customers like about those devices. So Brian and I are going to go through some of that stuff, but first let me tell you just a little bit about Fruition. We were founded as an IT service management consulting company, and in the last 4 to 5 years, throughout our association with the ITSM cloud tool ServiceNow, we have expanded quite a bit into helping our enterprise clients organize themselves in the cloud with cloud-based solutions. Over that time, we've done 200 or so ServiceNow implementations, so we've got to know the tool very well. And to that technical capacity, we've brought over a decade of service management and process experience. So we're extremely interested in using whatever the best technology is available to assist our customers in becoming mature from a process standpoint. Our services include a number of things that I mentioned, but basically it's everything that can be used to automate or mature IT processes, including implementations and integrations on the technical side, and managed services, virtual administration of ServiceNow, and process assessment and ongoing coaching. So that's what Fruition does. I'll let Brian talk a little bit about Matrix 42 as well, so you know who you're dealing with.
Thanks, Patrick. And Patrick, I'm not sure if the rest of the callers are experiencing the same thing, but I'm still seeing the introduction slide. Thank you.
How about that, thanks, Brian?
Either I just caught up, or we just got something fixed here.
Yeah,
so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Hulse. As Patrick introduced me, I'm with Matrix 42. I've been here roughly 2 years now, and I'm based out of Tampa, Florida, and have been in this space of what has been known as IT lifecycle management, PC lifecycle management, and a range of other things over the years. I've been in this space around 10 years myself. So a little background on Matrix 42 before we get started. One of the things just to be known is that we've been around for about 20 years now. We have headquarters here in the U.S. in Salt Lake City, or just outside Salt Lake City in Lehi, Utah. We also have offices in Frankfurt, Germany, with additional offices in California, Atlanta, and throughout Europe. We have over 300 employees worldwide, and we continue to grow quarter over quarter and year after year financially as a company. We have over 2,500 customers. And within that install base, over 2.5 million devices under management. Our corporate strategy, and what we're here to talk about today, is centered upon what we call workplace management. That's actually the evolution, what we found from PC lifecycle management or endpoint management, and we're going to talk about what we see there today. Go ahead to the next screen. Thank you. So again, the first thing we want to look at here on this slide is really the center of the slide. And what we see here is a picture of a user and the words "the workplace." So the first thing we want to talk about is really empowering the dynamic workplace. And the first question that I usually receive is, what is the dynamic workplace, and what is this whole concept of workplace? The way I like to answer that is really starting from kind of a historical point of view. Is when I got into this space years ago, products were designed around point or niche-based solutions. You had solutions that were patch management solutions. You had solutions that were purely remote control. You had solutions that were software delivery. You had separate imaging-based solutions. Then you saw this convergence over the years around really putting together this endpoint management or PC lifecycle management suites, where it was one suite of products that kind of was able to take all of those things and roll them into one console. But again, the center focus around that was around IT, and it was around helping you use one tool to do your day-to-day tasks. We are seeing a fundamental shift in the industry right now, and the user is driving that shift. The shift that I'm talking about is users wanting to work from any location at any time, whether that be the corporate office, that be home, airport, coffee shop, restaurant, what have you. So we're seeing IT having to shift with that demand. So the way we are now approaching the market is to be able to support the dynamic workplace. So what does that really mean specifically? That means being able to manage, oh, sorry, can we just go back one slide? Thanks. That's managing the physical client, right? We're here today to talk about BYOD, and that's bring your own device. So the physical client, you have an end user at home who wants to use their own laptop. Mobile device, I have an iPad, I have a Samsung, I have an iPhone. When I'm at Starbucks on a particular day, traveling through an airport, I'm going to use that device to gain access to work-related projects. So I need to be able to use my mobile devices. I need to be able to possibly use VDI to support that, to be able to, as an IT organization, be able to bring IT in-house into the data center and allowing user to gain access to corporate resources through virtual desktops. So we support, and we can move on to and software compliance and self-service, and we can move to the next slide. So we support all of those under one umbrella in one console. So we have a couple analyst endorsements here from Gartner and Forrester, really pointing out the fact that in the Magic Quadrant, we are the only vendor in the marketplace to be able to manage physical, mobile, and virtual environments with a single product from a single console. Okay, and that's really the important shift here, is to be able to say, I now need to keep up with the demands of my end users. If I don't keep up with the demands of my end users, they're going to go around IT. They are going to start emailing information to their personal email accounts. They are going to start using Dropbox. They are going to start using other applications that I deem not secure and certainly outside of my compliance windows. But again, if you don't make that fundamental shift to help support what you do allow, end users are just going to go around IT. So that is workplace management. We can go to the next slide.
So I'll talk a little bit about the background. We've done a lot of research, and there are a lot of statistics out there on bring your own device and how these trends are going to impact the workplace. And I think for the most part, the interesting thing is the uncertainty of it. And it is a trend that is not going to stop. And so these are a couple of choice statistics that I think that influence our decision making on this. So, and this is according to a Harris poll of U.S. adults, there are 81% of us use a personal device for work in some way, shape, or form. The cat is out of the bag; it's not getting back in. Of those people, the discipline is more on the side of the discipline you would use with your personal device as opposed to the discipline you would use with your corporate device. So you can see here, 31% have connected a personal laptop to a work network over a public or free unsecured Wi-Fi connection. 33% have unencrypted work data on their personal device. 46% have let someone else use this unlocked device with unencrypted work data on it. 37%, for example, have not activated the auto lock feature on their cell phone. And combine that with the fact that Apple expects conservatively to sell 200 million iPhones in 2013, even after all this mapping chaos. We've got ourselves an issue that we need to have a way to deal with. You want to be able to give your users the ability to use the devices that they like and still give your IT department the ability to control those things without creating additional work or hassle for either group of people. So we're going to talk a little bit about the asset lifecycle, and first just a little bit of terminology. Corporate-owned device is the opposite of a BYOD device. Corporate-owned is what you're probably all used to. BYOD is what's coming in and what we need to figure out how to deal with. We also make a reference here to the asset lifecycle. There's a simplified version of Fruition's recommended asset lifecycle below that bullet point there. And this is something we should all be familiar with, but just for context's sake, we are starting with the purchase. We're starting at the point at which IT expects to receive delivery of the device, and we're going through the shipping and sourcing process into production, which means it's been deployed into use. Maybe we're repairing it or replacing it here and there, and then at the end of its life cycle, we are moving to a retirement, destruction, securing data, making sure that that asset is disposed of properly in an environmentally sensitive way. We've also got there at the end of the life cycle a lost, stolen, or a situation in which the asset is gone and we're not sure exactly where it ended up. So we're going to do a quick overview of how corporate-owned devices and BYOD devices compare in the IT environment at key points in the life cycle. So during the procurement and receiving portion of the life cycle, this is when a lot of the work of corporate-owned device asset management is done. We're determining, certifying devices, we're determining what we should purchase and how much, we're determining how much we should pay for them, and then we're making sure that our vendors are following through on the agreements that they've made and they're delivering what they're supposed to us. So in a corporate-owned device world, we've certified and approved only certain devices for purchase. It limits the universe of devices that IT has to support. We are able to enforce security compliance through software solutions because we do have possession of the device, or we have our vendors are able to apply a certain image to the device before we get it. Those things are deployed from Central, so we know when they're going out, and we know who they're going to. We do have significant hardware costs that IT is responsible for, and therefore there is a lot of receiving activity that needs to take place centrally and in bulk just to make sure we've received everything that we need. On the bring your own device side, there is a much broader universe of devices that you have to certify and support. And that's one of the things we'll give a little bit of advice at the end of this. That's one of the things that we need to pay the most attention to. All of a sudden, your universe is much broader. And in order to give your customers the benefit, your internal customers the benefit of BYOD, you need to be able to certify as many of the popular devices as possible. Registration and receipt of these devices happens on an ad hoc and as-needed basis, an entirely different discipline. Generally, you're not keeping financial information in the CMDB, although you may still be responsible for usage on these devices, so you need some way to track that. So policies for the creation and management of assets with respect to these bring your own devices is extremely important. There are arguments to be made on either side of should these things be assets, but it's something that needs to be a subject of your conversation. And then finally, enforcing this compliance, some of the things that you do in a centrally owned device environment when you deploy them, there needs to be a way for you to manage that compliance in a more distributed environment on an ad hoc basis. In the production and support phase, when these devices are actually in the world and working for you and generating value for you and your users, in a centrally owned device situation, this control remains with you through applications and management systems that you've deployed to each one of these endpoints. Security is also something that you have centralized control over. This is where you're doing software distribution and certification centrally, so when we get into license inventory and license compliance, you do have a great deal of centralized control here. And then finally, when you have a situation in which you need to replace something, when a device has gone down, you're generally maintaining a centralized inventory of these devices so that you can quickly replace them with something that is very much similar to the device that the user lost or the device that broke. On a BYOD system, the usage and support end up being the main costs here. And one of the key challenges for you as IT managers is going to be, how do I deliver the level of IT support that my customers are used to and that my leadership expects across an extremely distributed environment. At the same time, network and data security is a major concern in a bring your own device environment for all these statistics that we mentioned before. Having the ability to do a software audit, control and compliance, very reactive software management is going to need to replace a strong control of distribution of software, which you have in a centrally owned device arena. And then finally, a strong replacement policy, allowing the users to go and purchase their own devices for replacement, or potentially use loaner devices, will replace a centralized inventory of devices to replace temporarily devices that are no longer usable. And then finally, we get into the retirement and disposal phase. This is when we're identifying devices that are no longer certified, should not be used in our environment, or have broken too many times. And we need to make sure that we're wiping those devices, clearing them of sensitive data, and then destroying them, as I said before, in a way that's good for the earth. So in a centrally owned device situation, we are reclaiming that asset, which does indeed belong to the corporation. We're able to reclaim and redistribute software licensing fairly easily because we can assess what's on the machine when we get it back. In a mobile situation, we can actually reclaim the SIM card, which is associated with the account and with the billing, which is a key point you'll see as we go into the next column. And then that asset must be disposed of because we're responsible for it. Bring your own device leads to less management of stuff, but more management of information and risk, particularly when an employee is leaving voluntarily or involuntarily. The asset is going with them in most cases. So there is, again, in most cases, no access for a local technician to put hands on the device and do data wipe or retirement process, reclaim software licenses. So you need some way to figure that out remotely. Reimbursement needs to be terminated so that you know that you're not paying for contracts or minutes or text that the corporation is not using. But in exchange for that, you're not responsible for the device anymore, so you don't actually have to go through a detailed disposal process, which I know a lot of my customers would be thankful for. So what does all that mean? There are a number of ITAM policies that we would recommend for a BYOD environment or somebody that's contemplating a BYOD environment. Obviously, we could spend hours talking about this, but this is a good start. So before you start allowing bring your own device, assuming that you haven't started already, or before you formalize it, make sure that you have a good sense of what's out there and understand what it is that is currently owned, is currently deployed. Do some sampling to determine what it is that you're going to be supporting so that you can determine whether your IT department is prepared for that challenge. It's recommended to keep a separate wireless network for BYOD and IT-owned devices. And to be able to push policies encouraging or enforcing that is always a good thing. As I've mentioned a few times, you want to make sure that you balance a reasonable level of support for your bring your own device end users with a reasonable workload for IT. The idea here is to give your customers the benefit of the doubt and say you know what devices you should be using. But we also don't want to increase the support costs for the organization. So in order to do that, you're going to need to invest upfront in certification and approval of devices, understanding applications that are going to be deployed, and doing this stuff very quickly. You have to be reactive to the marketplace and stay up to date. And then finally, you need to set and publish policies and governance for bring your own device prior to formal acceptance. There are a lot of situations in which an organization will, by default, start accepting bring your own device and then later have to clean it up from a policy perspective. If you have the opportunity, if you're researching this by attending this webinar very early on, if you have the opportunity, just make sure those policies are set before you start de facto allowing BYOD devices. And another situation that is, or another resource that is good for management of bring your own device is a centralized personal device management solution. So a lot of the questions that have come up, I'm sure, during the previous slides, how do we do this, right? This is great advice, but how do I do this given the infrastructure that I currently have? Well, a centralized solution for this is something that we would recommend everybody take a look at because of the things that you can do that are here on this slide. Brian, we're starting to get to the point where Brian can talk a little bit more about use cases. But there are a number of things that I just covered that are available within a centralized solution for endpoint management. You can enforce compliance. You can enforce and log acceptable and unacceptable software. You can enforce anti-malware to avoid security leaks. You can do backup, sync, enable encryption of data. And then finally, when a device is leaving the environment, you can do remote wipe. And you can do all of these things without having distributed the device in the first place. In many cases, you can do all of these things without ever having access to the device itself. So we're going to move on to Brian's segment of the presentation. Brian, you ready to go ahead?
I am. Thank you. So as a follow-up to the last slide, right, and we're talking about, these policies and the things that we can do. When you're talking about BYOD, it's a little bit different than corporate-owned devices in the fact that you don't really own the device from cradle to grave. However, you still need to create security policies and be able to enforce compliance around those policies. And that really is the goal of Matrix 42, right? When you center your IT services around the user, those security policies have to be flexible enough to allow the user to do things, yet secure enough that those users and their actions stay compliant to within your standards set by the organization. So really the question and the top challenges in that workplace are how can you provide the compliant access to the corporate data and applications, right? So we're going to cover off on that today. How do I enable usage of the personal equipment? Transforming those personal devices into the functional workplaces and the new work style. So we're going to go over through the next couple of slides and then we're going to move right into demo based upon that. So let me touch base on this slide real quick. Self-service, automation, consolidation. And what are we talking about here? Really what we're talking about is the majority of the folks on this call have our ServiceNow customers and have purchased the ServiceNow platform for multiple reasons, right? And the ServiceNow platform allows you to do consolidation of tools, automation of tasks, and then obviously self-service through the end-user self-service portal. And the way that we fit into the workplace management solution, or fit our workplace management solution into that message and that approach is through self-service, allowing the users to do device request and activation, data plan options. Again, am I going out for me? Am I going to go to Germany? Do I need to request 2 weeks of roaming? VDI requests, virtual desktops, right? Or even Zen applications. One of the really cool things about working, within our tools is from an iPad. I may not need access to a full virtual desktop, but maybe I need access to a Windows application to do my job on a Saturday morning when I'm out somewhere. I can pull up my iPad, open my Citrix receiver, click on the application, and I'm off and running. So again, self-service to be able to do those things. Automation is really a component after self-service. What happens when the request comes? Gartner did a big study, and basically they're recommending to most IT organizations, if there's an IT service that you can automate it, right? I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer that if there are tasks that can be automated, go ahead and automate those because it lessens the burden on your staff. It improves standardized operation for those processes, making sure that things are done the exact same way and that those are predictable, repeatable processes. So some of the things that we do there is, again, just the full mobile, physical, and virtual device management. When we go through these, you'll see that based upon a request or what have you, there's an automated process that happens in the background through the workflow of ServiceNow, calling to our platform, content management, virtual desktop request and allocation. And then again, when you talk about platform consolidation, how can we more effectively, as a workplace management company, allow you to do better configuration management, asset management, incident management, right? So, you know, that's really the goal, and we're going to cover off on that here in a couple more slides. Go to the next slide, please. Thanks. So here, what the integration of Matrix 42 and ServiceNow. So on May 15th, we went to into New Orleans, to the ServiceNow user group in New Orleans, and announced our partnership with ServiceNow and our ability to extend IT automation from within ServiceNow. And what does that mean? Again, everything that we talked about here around the workplace with mobile, virtual, and physical management, right? We now have the ability to extend all those services into the ServiceNow platform, right? So you're extending the automation out to the client. You're extending IT break fix, right, if you will, to the service desk administrator. So the things that we're really bringing into the ServiceNow platform are the physical workplace management, again, software management, so that's software delivery, application tracking, right, the usage of the application, not only, you know, is it open, but how much the application is physically being used while it's open, inventory, personal backup, you know, the ability to take full backups and recover a machine if something broke, easy recovery, again, taking the ability to recover a machine. The personal backup is actually for OS migration, being able to pull data settings off the machine, remote control, and other aspects of physical management, plugging right into ServiceNow. Virtual workplace management, again, we traditionally have VDI management as a part of our solution. What does that mean? That means that we layer on top of your current VDI infrastructure. What we can do is build out the infrastructure. We can set it up from bare bones. We can do capacity planning. We're adding additional infrastructure. We manage XenApp and Zen Desktop, and being able to manage the actual desktop pools and allocate those pools, and again, grow capacity, those types of things. The day-to-day challenges are very difficult, but again, if you think about the service around VDI, it's allowing a user to be able to access that and request that and those types of things. So we're offering that through ServiceNow. And then mobile workplace management. Again, break fix, or just registration, and amongst others that we'll get in to show you. And all these really tie back into BYOD, and of course also corporate-owned devices as well. So, but what is the real bottom line to this? So really what this allows you to drive is lower cost per incident, right, because you get more first call closures, and allows you to reduce time to resolution. So when you're making these calls, or people are calling in, you can alleviate some of those calls because of the end user self-service. And again, because we're bringing everything under one umbrella, we're definitely reducing the time to resolution, which ultimately reduces cost per incident. Next slide. Okay. So these are the use cases we're going to take a look at today, right? So as an end user, again, bring my own device. I need to request enrollment of my mobile device. I have my iPad already. I'd like to be able to use it. So I'm going to be able to go out to out to ServiceNow and be able to request that. Be able to manage my mobile device from I forgot my passcode, I need to reset it. Or how about I want to request a virtual workplace, whether that be a whole virtual desktop or just a simple XenApp application, right? Recover computer and reinstall computer, those may be more corporate-owned initiatives, right? But the ability to reinstall an operating system if I have a terrible failure, or better yet, recover it to its last known good state based upon an issue that I had, whether it be hardware or whether it be user-related, or I got a bad patch or what have you, I could use that for recovery, and install software, reinstall software, and those type of things. So these use cases really stem from conversations that we've had with other customers. I've sat down with people that are over IT operations for large financial institutes telling me that what they want to do from a BYOD initiative is to be able to stop allocating hardware to new employees. Okay, the idea of I'm going to give them a set amount of money, allow them to purchase their own device, and I'm going to pull all IT management, data management, application management back into the data center through VDI, right? Which allows me to put the user out there, keep everything from an IT perspective, right, back in-house. But now what are my worries? My worries are making sure that machine has access when it needs access. Is it secure? Is it compliant against those security rules? So what we can do is offer those use cases out through ServiceNow, right? Really pushing those IT services out to the end user. Our ability for, the management of mobile devices. Let's just take, for instance, the enrollment of mobile devices. Okay. Now, anyone out there, probably most people on this call, have some sort of mobile device initiative today, right? Whether it's BYOD or not, there's been a large shift from BlackBerry to whatever your favorite device is in the workplace. We have one customer that has told us that, well over 50% of that individual's time is used up around mobile device enrollment in a particular week because there are so many requests coming in and they're all flooding for one individual. So what can we do? We can streamline that process, automate that process, and better yet, put that process back on the end user to let them do it themselves. So we're going to talk through that as well. Okay? And with that, I believe we're going to move right into demonstration. Okay. I'm hoping that that everyone can see my screen at this point.
We can see the questions portion here. Yep, we're good.
Okay, great, fantastic. Okay, so the first thing we want to take a look at, right, is actually BYOD initiatives. This console should look familiar to all of you on the call that are ServiceNow customers and Fruition customers, etc. One of the things that we want to take a look at here is really extending self-service out to the end user. And because we're talking primarily today about BYOD, I'd like to start with an iPad. What I actually have here, if I can drag this over, may take a second for your screens to refresh, but I actually have an iPad running through an application where you're visibly viewing my iPad on my screen. I just want to take a quick look at it, right? This is an unmanaged, unsecured device, right? So when I come into it, I take a look, I've got my camera, my FaceTime. I don't have, if I go into, my profiles under general, I can come in here and I can look at my password lock is turned off, just basic things that we can take a look at. I keep all my applications in folders. It's just a little cleaner that way. But again, when I go through and I make my request, you'll be able to see these applications start streaming down to me. Another thing we can take a look at here is if I move into, my Gmail account, for instance, I have a Hotmail account, a Gmail account, and an Exchange account on here primarily today. Okay. When I enroll my device, you're going to see that I'm going to really do self-service enrollment into email as well, right? So what are the primary things that people want access to? They want access to email and applications, right, for their mobile devices. So we're gonna walk you through that right now. Okay. Actually, let me real quickly. Let me just drag this back to a different screen for you. Okay. So here's the ServiceNow console. I'm logged in as the ServiceNow administrator. What I would like to do now is actually impersonate an end user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and impersonate Maria Miller, which is just a test user on our side. And you can see here that I can come in and I can go to my service catalog, and I have my Matrix 42 Workplace Services options. I can also change over from here to the ESS end user self-service screen, and we have our integration built here as well. So depending on what end user self-service platform that you're standardized on today, we really integrate into that very well. Again, so the first thing we want to take a look at today is really around enrolling mobile device for a BYOD initiative. However, for instance of demo, right, let's go ahead and select the virtual workplace. What's this going to allow me to do? I'm going to come through here and I'm going to select this bundle. Okay, a bundle is really multiple IT services bundled together based upon a request. So if I come in here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose my virtual desktop for Windows 7, but I also want to enroll my mobile device. Okay? I'm going to choose those options and continue on. From here, you'll be able to see that I have my virtual desktop here shows me that this item will take 5 minutes to deliver, so we'll have to be a little patient. It's being provisioned to Maria Miller. If I come over to the next tab, my mobile device enrollment has already recognized me as a user in the system, right, through Active Directory or just user accounts, and it's pulled my email address. For uses of demo, I'm actually going to change this over to Matrix 42, MDM, Gmail. And I'm going to go ahead and insert my passcode. And I'm going to check out. It's going to bring me to a summarization screen. I can change some special instructions here and submit my order. For those of you using ESS today, this should all look very, very familiar to you. You can see here that we're using the standard workflow process. If we have time at the end, I can always jump back into the request itself and show you the workflow process here. Again, this said it was going to take roughly 5 minutes. I'm going to receive an email on my device. At that time, we'll go back to the device and take a look at it. Some of the other things while we're waiting for that email to come through that we'll just touch base on is, again, we talked about requesting software. BYOD initiative, I've got my own laptop, but I want to request a corporate piece of software that has the proper licensing for that type of model. I can always come in here, request software. Again, I could select something like Adobe or 7-Zip or what have you. I'm going to select my PC. I'm going to order now. And you'll see that this is also started as well. Okay? So it's really the same process, and I can do reinstalls the same way that I have a break fix. While that goes about, come back over here. You can see Matrix 42 device activation. I received an email at 1:13 p.m. I can select that. It's going to bring me in. It's going to allow me to install these profiles and put myself under management. It's asking me to set a passcode. I'll say later. I've got 60 minutes. At that time, it will actually force me to set my passcode. It's asking me to install applications. Now, I'm going to have to type in my passcode, so I'm going to move this off. Type in my Apple ID passcode. And I'll bring this back over. Again, you can see that I'm going to start bringing applications down. I've got a couple here already. It's pushing the Citrix receiver to me now. One of the other things that you'll be able to see is that I'm trying to find DMD. That I've removed for security profiles. I've actually, enforcing passcode, I've removed camera, I've removed FaceTime, I've removed YouTube. Again, from an email perspective, I was in Gmail here. You can now see that I have more accounts that were provisioned to me, so you have automatic provisioning of that. So as that tends to come down, we'll jump over. Again, we got 59 minutes. It will continue to remind me. One of the other things that I'd like to do is drag over that PC 101 quickly that we made the request from and show you that Adobe is actually asking to install. I actually have this set up this way to prompt the user for demonstration purposes. This certainly can be silent, but again, for demonstration purposes, I can then run and then it'll install this application, okay? Just wanted to kind of show you that closed loop process. So I'll move that back out of the way. From the Citrix receiver, I can open this. I can then go ahead and add my account here, which I'll do very quickly. Now, as I'm doing this, it is important to note that this can be automated, where this can be pre-configured for your Citrix account, for your address and those type of things. So if you pre-configure the address, then all a user needs to do is type in their username and ID, and they'll be up and running. You can do that via a web clip or a couple of other different ways, and it certainly works very well. So now I can click Save. It'll take a second here. It'll go through, it'll load, and then it'll display my virtual desktop for me to connect to. So we'll give it some time so that it can kind of finish the process. You guys can get an idea of how that works. But what I've also done is I've pushed on a web clip for the ServiceNow console for the end user self-service. So as a user, I can go back to that and request such things as, maybe I don't actually need the whole virtual desktop, but I want to request as an app application. I can do that as well. So again, let's just give it a couple of seconds here to finish loading, and then we'll move off into really the self-service portion of this over to more of the consolidation and automation portion. So I can actually come through here. You can now see that I have my virtual workplace, and I can start that virtual workplace, and it'll start up and connect into a Windows machine.
Brian, I'll put in here a quick question that we've got from the audience.
Sure.
You're demonstrating this using an Apple device. The question is, does it also work with Android-based devices?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I actually have sitting right here next to me, I have a Samsung Galaxy tablet. We are OS mainly MDM or mobile device OS independent. We work on Android and Apple and Windows Mobile and BlackBerry and a range of others. So there's very few mobile devices out there that we do not work on today. If I come back just real quickly before I jump back into the administrator console, right, if I come here, you can now see that as a user, I'm really hitting the same page, and again, push this out to my end users saying, if you need access to any IT services, just come here. You can come into the ServiceNow console, and again, things like request a virtual workplace, I could come in here and I could say, I could just request Adobe Acrobat. It'll bring me in, allow me to provision that order now, and then my Citrix receiver would have access to that as well. Okay? So really from an end user self-service perspective, being able to maximize your investment on the platform, being able to extend these type of services, whether it be requesting things for your mobile device or for your actual physical laptop, or from a virtual perspective, we've taken a look at all that. One of the other things here quickly that we'll talk about and is really jumping over to Maria Miller, being able to see that she has all of her requests here, but also you have your devices, not only your computers that I can look at the inventory on, but I can also select my iPad here and really be able to, now again, it takes a couple of minutes, and I apologize for that, to really let these platforms synchronize together. So what I'll do here is kind of go back, but the idea is in your iPad, after a few minutes, will synchronize. Once you select it, you'll have the ability as yourself to do things like passcode reset. And again, it just takes roughly, probably another 4 minutes for our platforms to fully synchronize. So it's very close to real time. It just takes a couple of seconds. What I'd like to do here is just jump back away from the ESS. Maria. And now let's take a look at, as a system administrator, someone calling in with an incident-based problem. What do we do for action based upon that? Okay. So again, from a user, come in, I have the ability to go into the service catalog and change the request for it based upon the user's request and request tasks, the same tasks, IT services, on behalf of that user. But also I can come down into my incidents and I can create a new incident. And that incident could be for Maria. And that configuration item could be my iPad. And again, from here, if I wait and select this communication device, I'll have access to the full inventory and can take action right from within that device once the CMDB does its full synchronization. And it looks like it just finished because I now have access to be able to clear the passcode, do a corporate wipe, which on a BYOD initiative is very important because it wipes only the application's data and settings that you originally pushed down or have pushed down since. So any actual end user data or pictures or what have you are going to remain. A full device wipe, on the other hand, is setting it back to factory settings, which is not a good thing to do in a BYOD initiative unless your end users are signing a waiver clause. Lock the device, send a message, and subscribe. Again, you can come down here. You can look at all the software that's on my particular iPad, security profiles that are installed on that iPad. So really being able to really take a look at that communication device and being able to do break fix on incidents. Now again, what we're talking about here is faster incident resolution, reduction of cost per incident, those types of things. So again, if I come back, I also have the ability to do that for Maria. From a PC perspective, right? And I can select that PC and again come through here, create that request, link it to that incident, and do things like OS refreshes, things like doing a recovery to their last known good backup, things like delivering software, or they're calling up because the Adobe's no longer working, so we can do a reinstall of a piece of software, those type of things. And then from a platform consolidation perspective, the last thing we can take a look at, we'll take a few questions, is really our integration, okay? What we're taking a look at here is that we're bringing in all of your computer data. Oh, I see what's happening. We're bringing in all of your computer data so that you have, full inventory data for more effective change management, incident management, problem management, all of those type of things into your ServiceNow CMDB platform, okay? So you have your computers, you have your mobile devices, and all of these things are synchronized in real time with Matrix 42. Now that is configurable, but it's something to point out before we start Q&A, is that we do a schedule-based replication from our database into the ServiceNow CMDB. However, on our side, we have a trigger and a flag that when we see an update to any inventory information or any policy information, what have you, we will take only the delta difference in data and push that into ServiceNow real time. The very important reason for that is that when you're doing incident-based resolution or effective change management, you need accurate data in your CMDB. When a user calls in with an issue and you're looking at stagnant data from a day or two ago, that doesn't help the technician working the incident. Okay. With that, we have 5 minutes left. This was high level. If we do want to dive down a little deeper with anyone on this call, we certainly can do that. At a later time, really get into what the architecture looks like and more use cases. But maybe we should open it up to Q&A, and I'll give the presentation mode back to you, Patrick.
Great. Okay. Yeah, and we actually do have quite a few questions here. So let me see how many of these we can get to.
Sure.
So the first question, Brian, is there an ability to remove or block non-business related applications? Your prototypical Angry Birds actually came up in the question.
Yeah, so that's absolutely, and that's what we talk about with enforcing compliance, right? And you set compliance rules, and compliance rules are going to be around your security standards that you created. And so if you think about it, applications certainly can be whitelisted and blacklisted. And what does that compliance rule look like? The compliance rule has SLAs around it too, and escalations. So what you can say is, these are whitelisted applications and nothing else. Or I can say these are my only blacklisted applications, okay? And if I see that, what do I want to do? The important thing when you do compliance rules the way that we do it is that you're not just kicking them off the network, right? What you're doing is you're really taking kind of a path where it says, if you have Angry Birds or Dropbox, right, which is going to be allowing people to move data on and off, then I'm going to pull your email access. But I'm going to keep you under management, and then a day later I'm going to send you a SMS text message, for example, saying, If you remove this, you're going to get email back. And I can continue down that path of every so many hours or every so many days, continually throttling that user back. And then as soon as they were to remove that application, we would see that they're still under management. We would lift those compliance, the lockdown rules that we have on them, and they would automatically be reprovisioned, their mail, etc. So the compliance is very important, and we certainly can do that based on a number of different rules.
Great. There are a number of questions as well about automated inventory of mobile devices. Now, I think you did cover a lot of this, and there is the distribution of the driver or the local software in order to do that control. But then, once that device is registered, then it does automatically go into the CMDB, which is a sort of automated inventory. Would you like to clarify that a little bit?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, Patrick. I mean, when you enroll your device, we're going to pull inventory the first time, right? That inventory comes into Matrix 42 mobile device management. Because we have our integration with ServiceNow, we're extending the IT services, into the console, but we're still doing CMDB, mapping on the back end so that we're bringing all that information in. Anytime you see a change on that inventory data that we're pulling all the time, we will immediately update the CMDB for ServiceNow so you have real-time accurate data.
And there's a couple of questions around the plugin as well, and I can speak to that. This is a plugin that was developed, or an extension, I guess, that was developed in cooperation between Fruition and Matrix 42. So we do a lot of these connectors and integrations with best-in-class standalone ISV type products. So the integration is made available, can be made available through contacting Matrix 42 themselves, or if you have a Fruition representative, if you want to talk about it, you can certainly call us as well. But it is an integration that is applied via an update set, and it's a fairly simple turnkey process to get the integration running.
That's a good point, Patrick. Thank you for clarifying that. And furthermore on that point, I know we're running out of time, and I don't know if we want to just cut it off here, Patrick, but we are in discussions with ServiceNow product management team and have been for some time around what we're looking to do from a next level of integration, right? What other additional use cases can we bring? And we're looking at suggestions from not only ServiceNow product management to be able to make sure that we're in lockstep with their initiatives moving forward, and obviously Fruition is there as a partner to help us in that direction as well, but also our customer base. So I've been traveling around, I've been talking to a lot of different user groups and just customers in general, and taking all that feedback and consolidating that feedback. If there are customers or users on this call that have seen it but wish we did something just a little bit more or a little bit different, please reach out to me, and we'll certainly have that discussion as well, right? One of the big things that we're publishing into our next release is remote control. And not only will that be offered through, our workplace management solution, but also as a standalone, right? For people that just have that individual need.
All right. Yeah, unless there's anything you want to add, Brian, I think we probably can finish a webinar on time for once, which is a record, I think. So I appreciate everybody for coming and for your questions. There are some additional, if there's some additional follow-up that you would like, please feel free to contact Fruition via the webinar's address that you invited, and we will arrange the right people from Fruition and from Matrix 42 to answer your questions. Thank you for continuing to attend our webinars, and we appreciate any feedback that you have. Have a good rest of the day. Thanks, everybody.